Hello, this is Chats Over Coffee with my yoga teacher, a podcast where the comedian Peter Brush, which is me, speaks to his yoga teacher, Kayla McCormack, who is not in the room with me now, so cannot say anything, but you'll be hearing her on the podcast in a mere matter of seconds. This episode, we're talking about the idea of non-attachment in yoga philosophy, and speaking of not being attached to things, this will be the last podcast, not ever, but just while we have a little break over the summer, and we'll be back in September. I'm not sure which Monday yet, so do stay subscribed. Don't use this as an opportunity to ditch us. We'll be back. May I suggest that if you have only just started listening to the show and there are more episodes you haven't listened to yet, this is a perfect opportunity over this little mini hiatus to catch up on any of the other episodes, and also a perfect opportunity to share the show among your friends or even people that you don't like that you think might be vaguely interested, or drop us a review on iTunes or something. I haven't had one of them for a while, as long as it's a good review, because don't have enough good reviews to counteract any bad reviews that might come in. But anything you want to do, that would be lovely. Those sorts of things are, they do really help us out. So I hate asking in some ways because I feel like I sound desperate, but it really helps. And I'd only ask you to do it if you were enjoying the show. And if you have been listening and enjoying the show, then thanks so much for sticking with us through thick and thin. I hope it's added something to your life. That's been our intention anyway. So I hope that, I hope it's made you feel good. Anyway, I'll shut up now, and we'll start this episode, shall we? Yeah, you're thinking, thank God. Yeah, here it is.
It kind of smells like plants. Like a simple smell, not floral, but maybe chamomile kind of idea or something like that, really. You
know how you find these naturally occurring plants and stuff like that turn out to be quite good for dermatitis or eczema, or like aloe vera, or what's that thing, jojoba or something like that?
Yeah, jojoba.
All right. Is it spelt jojoba?
It's Jojo, yeah.
I do that because I'm not saying my family are idiots, but they're not academic, really. So so a lot of the words that I use when I try and sound like a ponce, I don't really say them properly because I've only ever seen them written down. And you don't read every letter in the word, do you? You just go, I recognise that word. And so when you say
I do that, definitely.
When you say it aloud, you're just like, oh, jojoba, and hyperbole.
Hyperbole. I like that one.
I used to say hyperbole all the time. I used to say it really passionately as
well.
What's
it supposed to be?
Hyperbole.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
But why? It's not even spelled like that. It definitely shouldn't be hyperbole. But jojoba makes a little bit of sense because it's a Mexican plant. And in Mexico, J is said with an H sound. But I know that because I'm American. So that's more common, maybe.
Why are these, every ailment you have can be sort of cured by a plant, but you have to find it. So it's almost like, why has God hidden all of the cures for things in plants? If you've got acne or something, it's like God sent you on a quest to find the jojoba or something in a plant in Peru or something like that.
Anytime you've got an ailment, you've actually been given a quest, and you've got to do it before something serious happens. If you
want to make it really bleak, when you think of it in a pandemic sense, it's almost like God setting a new disease up is almost I feel like it's a team building exercise. When you go, when you've got those jobs where you work in an office and you have to go for a day away at some team building thing where you have to build a shed out of out of timber or something, and everyone has to work together. But it's almost like that's what God's done. It's just gets everybody in the world together and say, we're going to have a team building task, We're
going to have a team building exercise. Pandemic. Yeah. Everyone goes, oh,
this is
God.
Ebola. So, yeah.
And in half the stuff around the Nazis and obviously those symbols and everything, they're all illegal in Germany. They're not even illegal here, so it's a bit like they've taken more action to show that they really aren't that way or whatever in comparison to other countries.
They have to, really, yeah.
Exactly, because they have to, yeah.
You're not allowed to call your kid Adolf, I heard.
Oh, why not?
I mean, why would you want to?
I know, right? Yeah, there are some banned names, aren't there? Most countries have names that you're not allowed to call your child Like, you're not allowed to name your child Satan or whatever.
Really?
Because,
Oh.
yeah, I think so. I don't know if that's the case here, but I'm sure there are some places that where they have names where you're not allowed to name your child that because it would be harmful for the child to grow up with that name to try and... So it's very few. I mean, you could probably list them.
Would you call a dog Satan? The dog's not going to get picked on at puppy school. I
think it would be okay, but you might get some funny looks in the dog park if you start shouting Satan.
Someone's burgling your house and you go, quick, Satan!
There was that joke that went around. It was about a burglar that crept into a house, and then there was a parrot in a cage, and the parrot kept squawking, "Jesus is watching you," and then Jesus was the dog or whatever.
Yeah, no, I know that one.
Have you seen that one?
I know all the jokes. So, yeah.
All of them?
Yeah.
In the whole world?
Well, you've got to know. Or you might repeat something.
Well, okay, fair enough.
Do you have a favourite joke?
A favourite joke? Yeah. That's like asking for someone for their favourite movie. It's not really possible. They'll just list the last good movie that they saw.
I suppose. Do you tell jokes at parties?
Parties?
Yeah.
What's a party?
Well, yeah. Are you good at telling jokes, do you think?
No, I just make quips based on current situation. To be honest, I don't think I've ever felt comfortable with the idea of telling a joke.
What, because of the pressure?
No, because it's fake, memorized, like reciting. I feel like it's like, I don't feel like my heart is in it because I'm kind of reciting it or something. I don't know. Or like, what if they've heard it before and it's going to be like, rah, rah, rah.
It does sound that there's the pressure.
Well, maybe.
When you make a quip, it kind of doesn't matter if you don't get a laugh for a quip, is it? Because people might just think, oh, that's something that they've said conversationally.
Also, I feel like it's easier to read a joke and laugh, but maybe that's just because I like reading. And not that I don't like stand up or something. I've watched stand up and I find it quite funny. Yeah, it can be quite good.
Depends who's doing it, but
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Do you like jokes though? Like if you hear a joke, do you enjoy that, or do you think that there's, because you just said it doesn't sound authentic?
Well, I don't know. I think what it is like, when you think of like the jokes that go in Christmas crackers and stuff, and they're really like meh, or dad jokes or whatever, and people like laugh because it's a dad joke. It's like, oh, it's such a dad joke. But it's funny, but it's a dad joke.
Yeah. I
kind of feel like it's hard to create a real, funny, authentic joke that doesn't fall into one of those two categories.
Well, I know that. Don't worry. Because, people don't really, in stand-up, they don't really tell jokes, really.
No.
Like, not anymore.
No.
In the 70s they did, but they were allowed to use a lot more racist jokes back then, so it was easier. People don't really tell jokes, like ones that people just know somehow. People don't do those at stand-up shows anymore. And I think it's exactly what you kind of alluded to. When people watch someone at a show, they want to see what their authentic viewpoint is on things. They don't want to hear a joke that their granddad could tell them.
Yeah.
But those old jokes, the ones that are good, they're really good jokes, but I don't know who comes up with them. I mean, can't think of any off the top of my head that are appropriate.
That are appropriate. Oh, you've got some inappropriate ones then.
I was say most of them are racist, aren't they? Englishmen, Irishmen, Scotsmen as well. You can't think it's just all problematic. Yeah. Can't do. I don't know why I thought of this the other day, but have you ever done the equivalent of dying as a yoga instructor? Do you think?
What do you mean?
Like, just the gig just went so badly.
I have.
I don't mean that it was you. I mean it was them.
Oh. I have had the odd corporate yoga class where you could tell you're just on another level, and if someone walks into a yoga studio, they already have, I don't know, an idea, an inkling, something is clicked in their head that they want to give it a try. Whereas if you offer someone sat in an office a free yoga class, they don't have the same mindset. They just go because it's free. And I do sometimes find that in those classes, it's not very often. It's probably like once or twice in all the time that I've been teaching. So I do mean it's quite rare and far between. But you can find sometimes where you get a small group or a few people in a group where it's almost like they don't even know their body parts. Like they don't even know the names of their body parts because they're just so wrong with their movement that it's like, I'm going so slow. How can you not? What is, you're so disconnected from your body. You don't even know where your knee is right now. This is, and I don't mean it in like a judgmental way. It just comes back to like, oh, you need a private class. You know, I can't help you. I can't help you in this class with 15 other people. And you feel a little bit deflated, or you're not quite sure what to do, so you end up trying to just do things in a way that you can make sure nobody hurts themselves, and that's about it. And you're just happy that you make it through.
The only thing that made me sort of think about it is because I've started going to green rooms again recently, obviously, because I've started performing again.
Green rooms?
Green rooms.
Oh, green rooms. Oh, yeah. Like for recording. Oh,
no,
right.
No. You don't understand the showbiz terminology, obviously. But, so the green room is the room that all the acts share before we go on stage.
Show. Okay.
So we talk shop and stuff, and we bitch about the other comics that aren't on the bill, and I can't believe so and so is on TV, all that shit, you know. I can't believe I'm not, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then when one of the acts leaves the room, you go, "What's their problem?" You know, it's just it depends who you get. I mean, you get horror show green rooms where, you know, people that you really don't get on with and find really difficult, because some people are really difficult, and then you get some really great ones where, you know, it's really fun to be around. But anyway, one of the things that you get in green rooms often is people don't really want to talk to each other about their good gigs. They only really want to talk about the bad gigs, because they're the better stories. Like, because if you talk about having a bad gig to another comic, it's not an admission that you're a bad comic. It's just because you accept that you get thrust into these ridiculous situations with like strange audience members and things happen. So it's not like, oh, I did really badly at this gig and I am crap. It's just like, oh, that audience the other day, I can't believe them. That's what it's framed as. It's not. So it's not an admission of deficiency to sort of talk about having a bad gig, because once you get to a certain, especially if, I mean, you know, you tend to respect each other enough to know that. Well, certainly people respect me anyway, I'm sure.
Also, if you had a really good gig and you really, really talked about it, surely that would sound like you're just bigging yourself up.
Yeah. No one wants to know. So, no one wants to hear about that.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's just going to sound like you're full of hubris or whatever.
Yeah. As standard, you should do well at gigs anyway, shouldn't you? So the majority of gigs you do, you wouldn't want to be talking about, because that's just the people have been asking me how it's been going back, and like, oh, how have they been, and you know, of course it's going well, because I'm not bad at it, you know. Like, and even if I was average at it, it'd still be going well, because most of the time people laugh at the right bits because they want to enjoy themselves most of the time. Yeah. So I think my favourite death story was, I did a gig in Keighley once. There used to be a really nice gig there, but then someone started a new one just around the corner, and it was so bad. Because Claire's always said to me, like, if a gig is going badly, what you should do is, because I act like a bit of an idiot around the house more than people would think. I think it's because I get bored and I just like dance about and act like a prat. And
good.
Obviously, a lot of people listening would think, "Oh, he seems such a sort of like straight-faced individual and stuff." But I guess it's why I just burn off my nervous energy, I suppose. But so I can do these things sometimes where like I lift my trousers up really high and start dancing about, and it's funny to watch.
Like a marionette.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, and Claire's always gone, "Oh, if you're really struggling at a show, you should just pull that out of the bag," as if it's like some magic trick or something. So,
it would definitely get their attention.
I did this really terrible gig in Keighley anyway, and they were talking most of the way through, so you had to sort of try and hammer things to get their attention. But even when you did, they just didn't go for anything at all. I think the worst bit was I did a joke, and it was one where you have to think for a couple of seconds before you get it. But usually it would always be one of the best jokes I was doing around that time. And I waited for a couple of seconds, and it got absolutely nothing. And then I said, "Does everybody want me to move on from that? Because it's not quite clear whether you just didn't understand that or didn't think it was very good."
Yeah.
And then some bloke just went, "You're a c***." It's like, it's like, well, I mean, I don't get that very often because I'm not an alpha male or in people's faces and stuff like that. I don't usually get called things like that. So I just started laughing, and in the end, I did it. I thought, oh, do you know what? This is time for the trouser move. So I did the thing with the trousers.
Did you?
Yeah.
How'd it go down?
It didn't save the show. There's just some idiot walking around with their trousers, and so I don't know. By that stage, I didn't really care, but the acts thought it was funny. So I got the respect of my peers. And I think I only got 50 quid for it as well. So it's like, anyway, you never had a yoga class like that?
No, but you know what? And I can't be the only yoga teacher that has this. I have yoga bad dreams.
Right.
But usually what happens in my dreams is things start to just get out of my control. And before I know it, it's like, I'll be like, oh my God, I should have started class 30 minutes ago. But like people keep coming in, or someone keeps, asking me questions, or, this person's getting up and moving their mat. And it's like, oh, well, why don't you just sit back down? And you're like trying to control a crowd or something. And then before you know it, it's like, oh my God, I should have started class 40 minutes ago. What's going on? And then you get like all like stressed about it and stuff. I have those dreams, not like super regularly, but kind of regularly, like those kind of situations where I'm like super anxious because things just keep going wrong. I mean, it's funny thing is about the dreams is in real life, I would do something and I wouldn't let it bother me. If people were like continuously coming in, well, you would just treat it as if you were at like some sort of fair or something. You just wouldn't do the same kind of style class. You would stand up and you would just start teaching. You wouldn't try and focus your mind. You wouldn't try and like do a little meditation. You wouldn't do any, you would just start moving, because that is at least better than nothing. Like, I know I would handle it fine in real life, but in my dreams, I just crumble.
You're a bit powerless in a dream, aren't you, to change things? You're always very passive in a dream.
Mm.
So, is this the last Yama?
Yes.
It's a journey that's coming to an end then, isn't it?
This is the last Yama, but the Yamas and the Niyamas are the first two of the 8 limbs.
Yeah, we've got to keep going because we need stuff to talk about.
So yes, this is the last Yama, and it is called Aparigraha, which is usually translated to non-attachment. I think, in my mind, this is the most well-known philosophy, but I think that might be because it's quite closely related to a lot of Buddhist beliefs around non-attachment and therefore trying to attain enlightenment and stuff like that. So I think that it's quite well known. But I could be just because I've been in this field, if for want of a better word, for a while. So maybe
Yeah, everybody knows it. Just that everybody knows what agreement is.
Yeah, nobody knows what that is.
No, that happens though. Like, I know it's like people do it not to detract too much and make sure it's all about comedy, but I know people that have been comedians for 20, 30 years, and they'll use terminology on stage that only comedians really understand, because they've just been engrossed in comedy and comedians for 30 years, and sometimes the odd things over an audience member's head because they use a reference that we use as acts, and so you just think, oh, everyone must know what that means because that's your world. Yeah,
I could be doing that. That's basically what I'm saying, is I could be doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was your first thought? Because I'm assuming you at least looked it up.
I did look it
before.
up this time. Yeah, I think you wouldn't have to think too hard about the ideas of Buddhist monks and stuff like that to come to the, like, no possessions and all that stuff, and not being attached to material things, and not just material things, but like other people. And
I'm nodding.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
You're not living by that, are you? Being married and everything. You should get rid of him.
Get rid of that. So I mean, for the most part, there is that idea of like non-attachment. If you want to, or don't want to, or don't feel called to become a nun or a monk in any religion, doesn't really matter, you're not going to have a life completely free of non-attachment. That's not going to happen unless you give that up, unless you go down the road of being like a very spiritual person and think of yourself as you would a monk or a nun. So I think more from a practical point of view, it's just about being realistic with yourself and finding that balance. But I do think that, like, in general, we can get very attached to certain things. So it's a good idea to kind of step back from that. But like, in terms of, you were saying, like, if you were going to really give it all up, there's a saying or a story that a lot of people tell when they talk about Aparigraha. It's basically about like a Buddhist monk who, had lots of students underneath him learning and trying to reach enlightenment themselves. And they went to him and said, like, oh, what should we do? You know, how to teach us, teacher, basically. And they said, oh, well, go away and find non-attachment. You know, go figure this out. Release all of your attachments to everything in this world and then come back to me. And so they went away, and then they come back and they say, you know, I'm not attached to anything. I have no attachments. I am the least attached person ever. And then he's just like, you seem pretty attached to this idea that you're not attached to anything. And it's like, is it even possible? Because surely then you get attached to this idea that you have no attachments. So I think that on an individual level, you kind of have to decide how far you want to go with this, not just on a physical state, not just in like do I want to own a house or whatever, but in a mental idea of how mentally attached are we to things. Like you said, the first thing that you come to mind is going to be your possessions. That also leaves room for the ego to creep in a little bit. You know, people who were like, oh, I've got rid of everything. I just live in a flat with a chair. You know, it's like, well, why did you tell me that? But I mean, I'm not saying that like that. Like, it's not necessarily not a spiritual thing to get to a point where you don't have much stuff. But there is a chance that, you know, ego could creep in, and that could be the reason behind the doing, is because you think that makes it look good or whatever.
Surely not.
So, like, obviously we always have to be monitoring ourselves and things, but possessions are an obvious one. But then, like you're saying, with the ego, it's like, am I just doing it because I want to impress people, or am I doing it because I really do want to feel like I don't have so much clutter in my life or whatever?
Well, that's it. That's the difference between actually being a good person and broadcasting yourself to be a good person. The internet's shown a lot of that up, really. Yeah,
definitely. There's also like this like expectations of society, which you can take on board when you're young, and then as you get older you think you're attached to this idea, and sometimes we have to let go of that as well. So sometimes it can be, you know, the idea that you have to own a house or buy something when you're out by the time you're a certain age. It could be job related, like maybe you had an expectation for your career and that didn't take off. There's nothing wrong with having goals or ideas or like, oh, wouldn't that be great? You know, that kind of thing. But there's a difference between, you know, having a bit of a goal or an idea or aiming for something and getting seriously attached to it. Usually the big noticing one is that something else is suffering because your attachment to another thing. So, like, if your goal for your work is so all-encompassing and that's all you ever want to do, your relationships might suffer.
Well, how many great artists in film, for example, are really bad parents? Like, it happens a lot of the time, like Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's other things as well, like expectations and attachments that you had of yourself, you know, like, maybe when you were a kid, you thought, oh, yeah, I'm going to grow up and get married. I'm going to have 10 kids, you know. And then it's like, why would I want 10 kids? Or maybe you always wanted loads of kids and then you found out that you can't have kids. I mean, I'm not saying that isn't something that you have to process and understand and, in a way, grieve. But if that attachment was almost never there in the first place, you would never have had to go through that loss. So that's the other thing, is kind of thinking about it from that point of view. And then just generally body expectations is a really good one, especially like in the yoga community, you know, expecting yourself to be able to get into a certain pose, even if you realistically think, oh, well, not now, just later. But then what if you come to find out that, you know, your hip bones and your joints there are really tight and they're set quite deep, and that's you, and you'll never be able to do a split. And that doesn't necessarily have to be life-changing. You know, that doesn't have to be something that you have to like go crazy or cry about necessarily to let out all the emotion. It could just be you kept thinking that eventually you would get into this pose, and it's just not booming happening.
This is a realisation for me. I thought I got my heart set on splits. I thought you were going to...
I mean, I noticed that I don't teach splits.
I've got a lot of faith in you trying to teach me to do that.
No, I don't do splits. Sorry. That's my big example. I don't do splits. I can't. I bet if I had x-rays and things, they would tell me that my hips wouldn't do splits. It's not going to happen. I might ease into different shapes over time with, like, my hamstrings get a bit more flexible or something like that, or some certain muscle groups loosen a little bit. But for the most part, it's not gonna change.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And then obviously then there's like, I don't know, weight loss goals. I want to be super skinny goals, and I wish I was beautiful goals, and these kind of things that are like, they're not very healthy for the mind, less the body. The reason behind the goal isn't healthy.
Yeah.
If you're overweight and you think, oh, I could do to lose a few pounds, there's nothing wrong with necessarily watching what you eat and trying to be a bit more healthy and cutting out little, snacks or sweets or something that you know is your little sticking point or something. But tying your happiness to that goal of, I will only be happy when I've lost this weight, that's a recipe for disaster, obviously. So you want to just have more energy, make sure you feel like you've slept well, and things like that is much more mentally healthy goals.
I read that includes sort of like letting go of attachments to aging, I suppose, like not fetishizing youth so much, perhaps.
Yeah. No, I really like that.
Because you can't.
Yeah.
It's like every birthday you think, oh god, there's another year on the. But you think, well, what's the point in fixating so much on that? Because you're going to feel worse next year if you're going to. The numbers don't go backwards, do they?
Yeah. What do they say? This is the youngest you'll ever be.
Well, sort of, yeah.
Whatever that phrase is.
That's why I'm not nostalgic. It's just self-preservation, really.
I do think there is this idea around age that maybe people just need to do a little bit more introspection around. Like, what are they really wanting when they say they want to be younger? Like, for me, I don't feel physically less healthy than I did when I was younger. Maybe even a bit more healthy because I didn't do yoga. But, like, is there something that they want? Are they wanting to be beautiful? So is the issue that they're attaching beauty to youth? Because after the age of about 25 or something, your muscle doesn't build anymore, like, because obviously you're growing, so you grow quite a long time. You grow up into your 20s, especially guys, and then at that point muscle starts to degrade and you stop growing. You don't grow higher, you don't grow taller, you tend to stop growing.
You're saying I'm not going to be any taller than 5'8"?
I'm so sorry.
Oh.
But you tend to stop growing, so that includes your muscle mass. So you have to actually put effort in from the age 25 onward to hold the muscle mass that you already have. So if you don't tend to exercise and then you get to I don't know, 35, 40, something like that, and you've not exercised hardly at all, you could possibly feel quite weak. Obviously this depends on what you do for a living and all sorts of things. But there could be this point where you think, wouldn't it be great if I was young again because I had so much energy and I was so strong and all of this. And it's like, that's not really the youth problem. You just need to do something about it. And it's never really too late for that kind of thing. But I feel like maybe sometimes people think, I wish I was young, and there's nothing I can do about it. Like they're connecting that youthfulness with something that they think is not, they can't attain anymore or something like that.
Yeah, it's probably again, it's a fetish-sized idea of what they were like when they were young rather than the reality. Because if I say when I said, I wish I was 18 again, it's like, I'd love that anxiety-laden sort of like hormones out of control, like depressives to come right back. No thanks. But there is when it comes, obviously I don't know, it's pretty different for women in terms of beauty standards and stuff like that is because, how they say, like in acting or something, there's no roles for older women, or there weren't traditionally, were there? So you get to 40 and you're like, right, bye. But obviously, that's not a problem for a male actor because, people still think George Clooney's good looking at 60 something, but people don't go. I mean, maybe Helen Mirren, but or Felicity Kendall or someone. People still have a bit. I mean, I suppose this is probably before the MILF came into isn't it? And they're probably older than MILFs, Helen Mirren and Felicity Kendall, but people still fancy them, I think. But traditionally, it's been like the Hollywood standard of beauty is you've got to, be a young woman. And then, but it doesn't matter if you're a guy, you can be. I mean, you look at those Hitchcock films where Cary Grant was playing the love interest at 60 years old, or James Stewart is laying Rear Windows, looks much older than Grace Kelly. And you think Grace Kelly is a stunningly attractive woman, and she's with some 55-year-old photographer. Fuck off.
But in saying that, don't put yourself down because there is some ridiculous expectations of guys as well these days. They're what would you imagine? Like I don't know. I'm gonna sound a bit racist here, but like a white guy, brown hair, really tall, 6-pack, great teeth. Like these are the this is like your standard thing. But what is that? That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous expectation, because you don't have to be tall, you don't have to have straight brown hair, you don't have to have awesome teeth, but you should take care of your teeth.
You don't have to be white.
Definitely don't have to be white. Like, there's this idea that this idea of masculinity, it looks a certain way, and it doesn't. It doesn't have to. Definitely not.
Like a lot of body dysmorphia rates are going up really high in like younger people, and a lot of that is female, but there's also like a male side of it where like a lot of people are really worried that they've got to look like really ripped and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've worked damn hard for that 6-pack, obviously, and but she won't have seen because we don't do yoga with our tops off and stuff. But
because you all wear baggy clothes.
Yeah. But you just take my word for it; it's there. I was reading about how to apply it to your life, Aparigraha, and it said something about decluttering, like obviously not living with so much material stuff, which I guess makes a lot of sense because you don't want to be attached to material things. My dad when he was moving house, said that there's a rule that you're supposed to have when you move house. If you haven't used something within 2 years, you get rid of it.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, but there'll be an exception to it, like if something's like a family heirloom or something. Like I've not used my granddad's war medals for...
Yeah, family heirlooms and things you just only use once a year or something, something like, I don't know, Christmas lights. As
a general rule, I think that's all right every 2 years.
Yeah. I think that's a really good rule for clothes, because I don't say I have too many clothes, but I can easily get like just 1, 2, like maybe if I have 4 sweaters and then it's like, oh, I've got 6 now, and then it's like, oh, I've got this another one. Is this too many? Maybe I should only have 3, not 10, or something, something like that. But then what happens is the ones at the back of the pile, like you're saying, they just won't I won't wear them. Or if one is slightly uncomfortable or slightly itchy or doesn't fit, and I liked it when I bought it, and then eventually it's like, oh, it's been a year and I haven't worn that jumper because it's slightly itchy and doesn't really fit, or something like that. I think that's a great rule for clothes, for sure, because it really makes you go, be honest with yourself. No matter how much you liked it, if it's slightly itchy and you haven't worn it in like 2 years, give it away.
My clothes operate on a 1 in, 1 out basis, I think.
Yeah.
If I get a new pair of pants, I get rid of the old pants with the all the holes in them and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to go out and buy any pants. I just wait from like maybe at Christmas I'll get some.
As an adult, that's what you get for Christmas now, right?
Yeah, but
random bits
it
of
feels
clothes.
weird. Like they got to like think, oh, what size pants have you got? Get Is small an insult? Is it? Even though it's like waist size and stuff, isn't it? I'm not saying it is, but
no, but I do like the idea of clutter, like from an actual clutter sense, not just like there's convenience clutter. There's clutter because you got too much stuff, and then there's clutter, which is like having ornaments and knickknacks, things like that laying around your house. And I really don't like the clutter. Convenience clutter annoys me, but I can understand it. At least that makes sense. And having too much stuff, that's easy just to happen. It just happens. One day you wake up and you go, what? I have all this stuff.
And people buy you crap as well, don't they? Like,
yeah, people buy you stuff. Like maybe you go out and you think it was a nice idea, and then 2 years later you think, why the hell did I buy this? I mean, we all do that.
That's why you should never like enter a raffle or go to the fairground and like, oh, I've managed to hit 3 ducks, and now you've got some stupid giant cuddly toy that you don't want anymore. Like,
I had one of those giant teddy bears when I was younger, when I was in my early teens. Giant blue teddy bear. It was like the size of me.
Did you win it?
Yeah.
I once won one of those things with the claw that lift up the cuddly toys. Yeah. And then I had to have some stupid cuddly toy which I didn't want. I was like 20. Why do I want that?
That's great.
What you should do is you should buy lots of really, really big cuddly toys and then have them in your house, and then people will think you're really good at shooting games.
Yeah, and you'd be like, oh, I won these all at the fair.
Exactly,
I'm so good at shooting games.
It's like buying trophies, like just having them made out, like all these races that never actually existed or something.
Yeah, I think you say, oh yeah, I won that when I was a kid, and that one.
I could just get them made up, couldn't I? Like, Pretend that there was some comedy festival that never actually existed. I can call myself, like, Bridge End Comedian of the Year or something like that. Or, you know, that never existed. Well, here's my trophy with the big laughy smiley man on the top. So you can't argue with that, can you?
A big mouth going.
Yeah. So I'll pad my CV out with. So. I also read one thing that you should, and you'll approve of this because you're a fan of nature generally, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally. Nature
is in birds and flowers and stuff, not volcanoes and earthquakes and that sort of thing. You don't get earthquakes in South Carolina, do you?
No.
It's Los Angeles.
As often as you get earthquakes here, we would get earthquakes in South Carolina.
Yeah, we sometimes get them at like 3 on the Richter scale or something, don't we?
Yeah, very small, very rare, very like without an earthquake.
The tea in my cup of tea started to wobble slightly or something.
Yeah, really, it was your knee that hit the table, but you know, whatever.
Yeah. Because you get that sometimes. Like it happens at 4 a.m, and you wake up and someone goes, "Oh, I swear I felt it last night." And you're like, "You probably just had some sort of like, probably just been REM sleep or something."
Yeah.
And then there is a volcano in America, isn't there, as well? Yellowstone.
Yeah, but if that one goes,
we're fucked. Yeah. Yeah. You can't think about that every day, can you? Because that's really that's
non-active volcanoes that aren't spewing lava are very dangerous. All the volcanoes in Hawaii, I think, are safe because they're constantly spewing lava. So there's never a build-up. It's never going to explode.
It's like someone has sorted their mental emotions out, isn't it? Like they haven't built them up, so they're not going to blow one day. That's it. That's why all the Hawaiians are quite chill, right? They've taken advice from the volcanoes. Anyway, so
Aparigraha.
I read that a good practice for Aparigraha is to watch nature because nature naturally renews.
Or naturally dies.
Well, yeah, that's usually what I'd think.
Yeah, that was my first thought.
But if you watch a flower, it's not attached. It's just in a cycle of
of death and rebirth.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So, does that make sense though?
Yeah, it's the idea that nothing is permanent.
Yeah.
Really, and that things do have lifespans and stuff. And if you're watching something on a smaller scale, like, your poppies or something like that in the back garden, you can watch them grow, bloom. You'll watch them go to seed. The petals will drop and decompose, and you let go of the pretty flower because that's that. It had its time and now it's gone.
Maybe they're doing the same with us. Trees that live hundreds of years are just watching us slowly age and die, and then maybe they're feeling the same.
Yeah, all the humans. Oh, look, that one looks a bit wrinkly. It's old when I wasn't looking. I think that one's going now. Oh, what a shame. Oh well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Nothing else to add really, because I said loads at the top. So I'll shut up for a couple of seconds and let this music play out a little bit, and then it'll just stop.